She didn't even look at me when she handed over the leash. Just held it out like she was passing off a package with fragile writing all over it. The leather felt stiff in my hand, cool and foreign, like something that still belonged to her. And maybe it did. "It's just while we're away," she said, already turning toward the car. Her voice clipped, careful, not angry, just distant. Lucy looked up at her, then at me, ears twitching as if she felt the distance too. I wrapped the leash around my hand without thinking, but it tightened harder than it should have. Not from her pull, but from the memory of all the things my daughter no longer trusted me with. "I've got her," I said softly. She didn't answer. The porch light flickered behind me. I could hear the drizzle tapping the wood, slow and steady like a clock. The scent of wet lilacs hung in the air. It used to mean spring, new beginnings. Now it just reminded me that nothing stays fresh forever. My daughter didn't hug me goodbye. She just walked off in that navy coat she always wears when she wants to feel in control. I watched her back disappear into the mist, and all I could feel was the quiet weight of something unspoken pressing down between my fingers and that leash. I crouched beside Lucy, her warm breath fogging lightly in the cool air. "We'll be all right," I whispered, but I think I was saying it more to myself than to her. Lucy stood still, her brown eyes locked onto mine. She didn't blink, not once. There was a stillness in her stare, not fear, not trust, just waiting. I'd seen that look before, long ago, in mirrors and memories. It's the look you give when you don't know if you're staying or leaving. Her tail didn't wag. Her body didn't lean in. Just those eyes, holding me there, asking a question I didn't quite know how to answer. I looked back at her, trying not to shift or reach too fast. I knew better. I'd been that way too. Tired of being pulled in before. I was ready to stay. A breeze moved through the porch, soft but steady. Wind chimes tapped once, just once, like a thought brushing against memory. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and then stopped. Everything else stayed quiet. I tucked my hands into my lap and waited. Let her see me as I was. Unsure. Trying. I didn't force her. I didn't coax. I just met her gaze and hoped that was enough. "Just while we're away," she repeated. Her voice didn't crack, didn't falter. It wasn't harsh, but it wasn't soft either. More like a reminder than a reassurance. I nodded, even though her eyes were already drifting past me, to her husband standing by the car, to the trunk that still needed closing. I wanted to say something, anything. But the moment felt padded, like we were wrapped in something fragile we didn't dare press too hard on. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. She didn't notice. She adjusted the sleeve of her coat and turned. Her perfume lingered in the air, a scent I used to associate with holidays and homecomings. Now, it just smelled like distance. The rain had picked up a little, not enough to hurry, just enough to blur the edge of the garden. I watched her walk down the steps. Her shoes clacked once, then again. Then the car door slammed shut, louder than it needed to be. And just like that, she was gone. I eased myself onto the swing, the wooden slats groaning beneath me like they weren't used to holding this weight anymore. Lucy curled near the doormat, her body tucked tight, eyes alert. We didn't speak, not that we could have, but we didn't move either. We just sat. The porch wasn't mine, not really. It had been Anna's home for years now, but I had once stood on these very steps, holding her hand as she learned to tie her shoes, singing lullabies into the breeze while she napped on my chest. Now, I traced my thumb over the edge of the chipped paint on the rail. A memory lived there. Maybe. Two, it was the kind of thing that used to matter, back when a house felt like a family. Birds chirped somewhere nearby, muffled by wet branches. The sky above was soft gray, heavy but not yet ready to cry. Lucy shifted beside me. still watching, still here. I wondered when the porch stopped feeling like home and started feeling like a place I had to ask permission to sit. The scent hit me all at once, sweet and thick. Lilacs. They were blooming just along the porch rail, their petals damp with drizzle. For a second, it took my breath away. Not because it was overwhelming, but because it was too lovely for how tight my chest felt. I turned my head slightly to breathe in something else, anything else. But there it was again. That scent, like a memory I didn't ask for. Lucy shifted closer, her paw pressing softly against the side of my slipper. Not urgent, not playful, just a quiet touch, like a question. I looked down at her. Her ears twitched. Her eyes didn't ask for anything. But her presence did. She was here. So was I. The drizzle softened. A drop rolled off the edge of her ear and hit the porch with a tiny sound. I didn't flinch. I didn't know what came next. But for now, we were both still here. And maybe that was enough. We sat there side by side, two strangers held together by silence and leash. Lucy didn't lean on me. I didn't reach for her. We just stayed, like bookends on a shelf no one had touched in a while. My hands rested on my lap, fingers laced. Her ears twitched now and then, catching small sounds I couldn't hear. I thought about speaking. But what would I say? That I wasn't sure why she was here? That I wasn't sure why I was? The porch light cast a soft glow over her fur, over my shoes, over the line between us, and then, without a sound, she lowered her head and rested it gently on top of my foot. I didn't move, didn't blink. Something inside me exhaled, just a little. She didn't belong to me. Not yet. Maybe never. But at that moment, she didn't leave. And maybe that's what second chances look like. Quiet things that stay when they don't have to. The broth was still bubbling when I turned the stove off. I reached for the old chipped bowls, one blue, one cream, and filled them slowly, careful not to splash. The rosemary floated just right. I'd always known how to make it rich but gentle. She used to say it tasted like a hug. I stepped out onto the back porch where the sun still warmed the wood under my feet. Placing her bowl on the step beside me, I left just enough space so she could reach, but not so close that she'd feel pushed. She sat, knees to chest, hair tucked behind one ear, the way she always did when trying not to cry. We didn't speak. The steam curled between us like a quiet thread. She lifted her spoon. So did I. A cicada buzzed somewhere close, the rhythm, slow and steady. The porch creaked just once under our weight. She didn't look up, but I could see it. The way her shoulders curled in, like she was trying to make herself smaller than the hurt, and the tiniest quiver of her lip when the steam fogged her glasses. She dipped her spoon again and again. Tears didn't fall, they just gathered, quietly, at the corners of her eyes and slipped down when she blinked too slowly. I didn't point it out, didn't reach over. I just kept eating beside her, letting the salt from her silence season the soup we shared. She held the spoon like it might betray her, fingertips white from holding too tight. Every move she made felt calculated, cautious, like she was afraid to spill even a drop of herself. I didn't say anything. Just kept my own pace slow, soft, let the moment breathe between us. She blinked once. Slow. Too slow. Like she was holding something back with every lash. The kind of blink that tries not to let the ache slip out. The soup steamed gently in our bowls and the fading light made her face look older than I remembered. She was still my girl. But in that second, I saw her heart break sitting there beside her, plain as day. I shifted slightly, enough to let the porch creak so she'd know I hadn't left. I didn't reach for her hand, didn't brush the hair from her cheek. I'd done that once when she was younger, after a fall or a heartbreak or some scraped pride. But tonight wasn't for fixing. Tonight was for being close enough to feel her quiet. There was a time when she'd run to me without hesitation. Curl up against me during thunderstorms, or call out "Mama" in that small voice she used when she wasn't sure what she needed, only that it had to be me. Now she sat beside me, eating soup like we were two strangers politely sharing space. Her eyes stayed on the bowl. Her hands moved like she was doing a chore, and I remembered how I once held her through colic cries and later through silent heartbreaks. I remembered brushing her hair on this very porch, how she once laid her head on my shoulder, sticky with popsicles and trust. But now I saw the way she tucked herself in, how carefully she placed the spoon on the bowl's edge, how she never quite learned my way anymore. I was still her mother, but something between us had gone quiet. Time, maybe. Pride, probably. Hurt, surely. I sipped my soup and blinked slowly. Let the warmth fill what her silence had left hollow. The swing still had her name carved into it, barely legible now, faded from years of weather and forgetting. I brushed my hand over the spot as I sat, wood rough under my palm. The porch had seen birthday candles, sidewalk chalk, her tiny hands clutching crayons, and a juice box. It once held her loud laughter and messy feet dancing barefoot in July. Tonight, it held only the sound of my bowl clicking softly with the spoon. She was there beside me, but she barely looked up. No smile, no lean. Just that quiet, tense way of sitting like she was borrowing the space, not belonging to it. I ran my finger along the peeling paint, remembering how we used to string lights across this rail every Christmas. Even when we had no guests, she was still here, and so was I. But the porch no longer fit us like it used to. Somewhere, in the darkening sky, a star blinked awake. The breeze shifted, warm, then cool, and the silence between us crept in soft as dusk. There was a time we couldn't stop laughing over soup. She'd slurp it too fast, spill it down her shirt, then laugh so hard her cheeks turned pink. I taught her how to stir it, how to skim the fat off the top, how to crush rosemary between her palms. "It brings out the oils," I'd say, and she'd giggle like I'd just told her a secret. But tonight, there was no giggling, just the clink of a spoon and the quiet sigh of a girl holding herself too tightly. I glanced over. Her hands were steady, her shoulders pulled back like she was trying to appear fine. I thought of that little girl who didn't care about messes, who measured love in shared meals and crooked drawings, not clean lines and quiet lips. Somewhere along the way, she started measuring herself by perfection, and I let her. She brought the spoon to her mouth and nodded, just slightly. "It's still good," she whispered. "I'm glad," I said, but the ache in my chest didn't move. Her silence used to feel soft, like a blanket. She'd lean into it, trust it. It had shape, a kind of comfort. But now, her silence was stiff, cold. It sat between us like a locked door. I didn't know what to do with it. She didn't glance up, didn't let her shoulder drop against mine like she used to. Her quiet was no longer restful, it was guarded. I sipped my soup, hands warm from the bowl, but inside I felt cold. I missed the girl who once reached for my hand under the table just because she could. Now, I wasn't sure how to reach for her, and maybe that's what hurt most. I let the soup cool first. I didn't pick up the spoon, just sat there, waiting. Maybe for her to say something, maybe for her to look at me, maybe just for the moment to shift on its own. She didn't speak, she didn't glance over. She just ate, slow and proper. And somehow that silence didn't crush me. It stung, but gently, like when you press a bruise just to see if it still hurts. We finished in silence. Lucy thumped her tail once and lay down nearby. The cicadas had grown louder now, their hum filling the space where words had once lived. I set my empty bowl beside hers. Neither of us moved to pick them up. She sighed, finally. Not big, not dramatic, just enough to let the moment slip into the dark. I didn't say I missed her. I didn't ask if she missed me. I just sat there beside her, letting love mean letting go. Even if just for tonight. The door wasn't fully closed. I didn't mean to stop, but her voice caught me mid-step. It wasn't raised, just sharp, like scissors snipping thread. I could only hear parts. She left the burner on again, she said, and Lucy missed her appointment, and the mailbox. It wasn't a conversation. It was a list, a quiet, tidy summary of all the ways I was no longer enough. The way she said it, clipped, almost bored, cut deeper than shouting ever could. The hallway was half lit, sunlight creeping through the dusty blinds in slanted stripes. The dishwasher hummed softly from the kitchen. A clock ticked steadily behind me, but time didn't feel steady anymore. I stood still, hand resting against the wall like it might hold me up. That door had stayed open just enough for me to hear what I was never meant to, or maybe I was, because her tone didn't sound like a daughter worried about her mother. It sounded like a woman managing a problem, and I was the problem. She named them like she was reading from a note she'd rehearsed. Burner, vet, mailbox. I'd almost forgiven myself for those things. Almost. But hearing them strung together, lined up like tiny failures on display, made me feel like I was fading by inches. The hallway floor creaked softly under my slippers. I didn't move. Her voice wasn't cruel. It was casual, practical, the kind people use when sorting laundry. Like I wasn't her mother, just one more thing to keep track of. I could see the sunlight barely touching the edge of the kitchen tile. The way it lit the grout lines reminded me of mornings we once spent baking together. She used to smear flour across her cheeks just to make me laugh. Now she doesn't pour me coffee. Don't ask what I want for breakfast. Just documents my dents like a file she's quietly building. I didn't need to hear more. I already knew. Lucy shifted beside me, her leash pulling gently in my hand. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd wrapped it until it bit into my palm. She didn't know what was being said behind the door, but her body leaned into mine like she felt the shift in the air. I looked down at her. My fingers curled tighter around the leash, not from control, just from needing something to hold, something that didn't question me. The hallway was cool beneath my feet. I could smell her fur, warm and familiar, mixing with the stale scent of toast from earlier. My knuckles had turned white. I wasn't sure if I was angry or ashamed. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe I was just tired of being measured by moments that weren't the whole of me. Lucy's tail brushed my leg once. I didn't speak. I just held on. There was a time she used to run to me with scraped knees and wide eyes, certain I could fix anything with a Band-Aid and a kiss. She'd tug on my apron strings, bury her face in my side, and ask questions like, "Is thunder mad at me?" Now she spoke of me like a misplaced coat, something useful once, but now too worn to trust. I stood there, still as a statue, listening. To a version of myself I didn't recognize being discussed from the other room. When did I stop being her anchor? When did she trade in the woman who rocked her through fevers for this worried version who counts my slips like coins? I glanced at the crooked photograph hanging on the wall, me and her in the backyard, laughing at something I can't even remember now. Lucy's tail brushed against my calf. I closed my eyes. I used to be her beginning. Now I feel like her caution, sign. I didn't storm in, didn't make a sound. I stood there, spine straight, heart heavy, and let the weight of her words settle around me. I'd lived a long life, raised children, buried loved ones, made mistakes, found grace. I wasn't broken, just bruised. I'd earned those bruises. I carried them with as much pride as pain, and I had made peace with my cracks, those tiny places where the light still gets in. But hearing my daughter speak of me like I was too far gone to trust, that bruised something deeper. A part of me I hadn't armored yet. The hallway light shifted. A shadow passed across the rug like a slow cloud moving across the sky. Their voices quieted. Then footsteps, a door closing, still mourning. Still quiet. But something between us had changed shape. She walked past me moments later. I waited for a glance, even a pause. Nothing. Her footsteps were soft, careful, but her silence was louder than anything she'd said before. I stood there, still, holding Lucy's leash, hoping for something, an apology maybe, or just recognition. But she kept walking. Just a rustle of her cardigan and the hush of her socks over the wooden floor. She didn't even know I was there, or maybe she did, and that's what hurt more. The light had filled the hallway now. Bright, clear, warm even, but it didn't feel like it belonged to me. It was just a casual visit, my neighbor stopping by with a smile and a mason jar of mint from her garden. We were sitting at the kitchen table when she pulled out her phone. "Oh, did you see this? From the picnic?" she asked, already tapping the screen. I didn't know there'd been a picnic. The screen lit up with a photo. My grandkids grinning, cheeks sticky with juice, Lucy perched calmly on my grandson's lap. Checkered tablecloths flapped in the breeze. Paper plates full of food I used to make. Everyone looked happy except me, because I wasn't there. No folding chair with my cushion, no half-full glass of iced tea with the lemon slice floating at an angle. No me. The photo stayed lit a second too long. "Oh," I managed. No, I hadn't seen that. I smiled, but I felt something fold up inside me. She tapped again, showing me more, but I stopped looking. The honeysuckle in the window swayed slightly. The phone sat too bright on the table, but my chair still felt dim. I was deadheading the marigolds when I heard it. A laugh, high and clear. It slipped through the air like ribbon, lifting in the breeze, landing somewhere I couldn't reach. Froze, hand still hovering above the wilted stem. That laugh. It was familiar, like one of mine. One I'd rocked to sleep, hushed during scary movies, fed spoonfuls of pudding in high chairs. I straightened up slowly, scanning the fence line. It came again, this time, paired with a faint squeal and what sounded like a paper plate being chased by wind. They were close, just not close to me. The lavender buzzed with bees, careless in their happiness. The garden hose leaked slowly by the cracked stone, water trailing toward my shoe. I stood there, a moment longer, blinking against the brightness. The laugh faded, carried farther by the breeze. It didn't call me in. It passed me by. I knelt down in the dry dirt, gloved hands wrapping around brittle stems. The sun baked the soil into little flakes, easy to break apart, hard to rebuild. I pulled gently, each tug more like a sigh. Lucy wandered over, tail low, then pressed, her warm head against my thigh. She didn't nudge, just learned. Like she understood something had shifted but didn't want to ask what. I didn't say anything either. The silence didn't need explaining. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the soft clink of ice in a glass. Someone else's lemonade. Someone else's porch. I stayed right where I was, fingertips brushing old thyme leaves, the scent faint but familiar. I dug deeper, trying to bury whatever ache had bloomed beneath my ribs when I saw that photo, heard that laugh. Lucy's breath moved slowly against my leg, steady and sure. I didn't need a reason to keep going, just something to hold on to. Looked up from the garden, blinking too fast. The sky was too blue, bright, open, mocking. No clouds, no shadows, just heat and silence and that terrible cheerfulness that only summer can pull off. Sadness was supposed to be a winter thing. Something you could wrap in a blanket, hide behind fogged windows. Let the gray match your mood. But here it was, grief in full sun. It shimmered on white fences and bounced off the neighbors' wind chimes. It rolled over the fence on waves of laughter I couldn't trace. It settled in the sweat behind my knees, and the sting in my throat I wouldn't call tears. The air smelled like sunscreen and grass clippings, the kind of smell that used to mean family barbecues and water balloons and maybe even joy. Now it just reminded me of what I wasn't invited to, and I hated that the sky didn't even have the decency to look sorry. She stayed right there beside me, tail still, body warm against my ankle. I scratched behind her ear, and she leaned into it without a sound. That was the thing about Lucy. She never asked why. She never made me explain what I couldn't. I let my head rest gently on hers. Her fur smelled like the garden, lavender and sun, and something that made my heart settle just a bit. She didn't know about the invite, didn't know she'd been part of something I wasn't included in. All she knew was the rhythm of my hands and the quiet of my breath. The birds chirped too loudly in the background, and the wind fussed with the tomato vines like a child tugging for attention. But I didn't move. At that moment, it was just us. Not missing anything, not asking anything, just staying. And maybe that was enough. I sat back on my heels, gloves resting in the dirt beside me. For once, I didn't keep pulling. The weeds curled around the marigolds in time, tangled and messy, but alive. And I thought, maybe not everything needs fixing right away. Some things just need time. The garden tools lay scattered in the grass, handles warming under the afternoon sun. My knees ached, but I didn't mind. The hat brim shaded most of my face, but I let the sun press against my back like a reminder that I was still here. Still growing, in my own way. From somewhere down the street, a laugh rose and fell. I didn't try to follow it. I reached out and let the weeds stay, their green edges brushing against the plants I once tried to keep tidy. Today, I let them have their place. Some grief doesn't need pruning. It just needs space to bloom and rest. She wouldn't settle that night. Lucy paced the living room in slow circles, her nails tapping gently across the hardwood like a soft metronome. The lamplight flickered low in the corner, casting gold over the rug, but it didn't calm her. I watched her sigh and shift again, her body brushing lightly against my knee. "Lucy," I whispered, barely above my breath. She paused, but didn't come. Her ears stayed up, tuned to something I couldn't hear. Her head tilted like she was waiting for something. Or someone. The air smelled like pine, wet and rich from the evening storm. The old wool blanket sat draped across the rocker, untouched. I usually wrapped myself in it, but tonight I felt too restless to tuck in. I couldn't name what she sensed, but I felt it too, like the room was holding its breath, and I held mine, with it. The house was quiet, but not soft. The kind of quiet that presses in, sharp around the edges. The old clock ticked too loudly. Every second landed like a question I didn't want to answer. Lucy pressed close to my shin, her breath warm. And quick, not panicked, just alert. Her body stilled, but her presence felt electric. She was listening to something. So was I. I stared at the ceiling, wondering what it was she knew that I didn't. What had shifted in the air or in us? The hallway nightlight glowed dim, casting long shadows that moved when neither of us did. The floor creaked once beneath. Her weight, the kind of sound you only notice when everything else has fallen silent. The air smelled faintly of damp leaves, the kind that linger after a storm. Something was coming. I didn't know what, but I knew it had already arrived. The doorbell rang just after sunrise. Not urgent, just certain. A soft tone that asked to be heard, not answered. Lucy moved before I did. Her paws patterned down the hallway, tail already wagging. She knew. Somehow, she always knew. I stood slowly, tying my robe tighter than needed. My slippers were crooked, one hell-bent. I didn't fix them. I didn't need to. The morning light spilled in through the front window, soft and gold. I opened the door, and there he stood, Tom. I didn't know his name then, but I knew his face. Not from memory, but from feeling. He smiled, kind and calm, and for some reason I stood straighter, like I'd been waiting for someone to remind me I could. I didn't speak. Neither did he. Not yet. He didn't ask anything, just held out a biscuit in his hand. Lucy took it gently, her eyes soft, tail low and steady. She nudged her nose into his coat, and he chuckled like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Guess she remembers me," he said, voice low and warm. I nodded but didn't answer. I was waiting for the part where he asked what happened, or why I looked the way I felt, but it never came. He didn't look at me with pity or concern, just kindness, pure and unpolished. And I wasn't bracing myself anymore. I was just there. Lucy stayed close, wagging in that small, sure way dogs do when they feel something good in the room. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen, not examined, not assessed, just seen. He turned to go, slow and easy. She picked me, he said, glancing over his shoulder with a smile that needed no reply, just knowing, like he understood something I hadn't said out loud. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, the damp wood cool beneath my slippers. The rain from last night still clung to the railings, to the steps, to everything we didn't talk about. Lucy padded, back to my side, and sat. Calm now, like her work was done. The scent of coffee drifted from the kitchen behind me, warm and grounding, but I stayed right where I was. Lucy hadn't run away. She'd gone out looking for something I forgot how to trust, gentleness that didn't ask me to earn it. She brought it back to my door, and then she stayed. I watched them for a moment. Lucy and the man. She trotted a few steps beside him before, turning around, circling back toward me with a quick glance. She wasn't trying to leave. She was showing me something. Something I hadn't seen in a long while. That not everything lost stays gone. That not every distance means abandonment. She brushed past my leg and curled again at my feet, head tucked tight. I sat in the nearby chair, my hands still for once. The curtains shifted in the breeze. A bird hopped through a puddle just outside the window, and for the first time in a while, I let my eyes close. Maybe she hadn't been lost after all. Maybe I had, and maybe she just brought me back. The dirt was soft that morning, cool at first, but it warmed quickly in my palms. I let it crumble between my fingers, slow and careful, like it had been waiting just for me to come back. I pressed the tomato seedlings into the soil, one by one, not too deep, not too tight, just enough to hold. Each one felt like tucking in, a quiet memory, something fragile but still alive. My knees ached as I leaned in, but the ache felt good, like a reminder that I was still part of something that grew, something that didn't need me to be fast or flawless, just present. A breeze moved across the garden, lifting the scent of mint and damp earth with it. Dew sparkled on the leaves like glass. I closed my eyes for a moment and exhaled. Maybe this was what peace felt like. Under your nails, in your breath, and nestled in the space between what was and what could be. The knife clicked softly against the cutting board. Lucy thudded her tail once from the patch of sunlight by the back door, eyes watching every movement like it mattered. I sliced the cucumber the way she liked it, thin, smooth, each piece cool to the touch. Then just a sprinkle of salt, nothing more. Just a few, I whispered. She didn't move. Just watched, waiting with that quiet faith dogs are born knowing. Feeding her felt familiar. Not like a chore, not like an errand, just rhythm. A simple way to say, I see you. I remember. The morning light pooled over the counter. The fridge hummed softly behind me. The scent of fresh toast still lingered in the air. I placed the slices in a bowl and set them near her feet. She blinked once, then leaned in, and just like that we were fed. My hands shook a little, carrying the watering can, tying up the tomato vines, brushing dirt off the leaves. But they still knew what to do. The same hands that used to braid Anna's hair in the kitchen before school now moved through garden. Tasks like muscle memory. I looped the twine slowly around the stake, then tucked the plant's stem close, gentle, steady. They weren't perfect hands anymore. Not fast, not flawless, but they were still mine, and still capable. The sun climbed higher, turning the tomatoes a warmer red. Birds chirped above me, filling the quiet with soft noise. My apron brushed gently against the tall leaves as I moved. Down the row. Maybe I couldn't hold everything the way I used to, but I could hold this. Some mornings, I didn't speak at all, just moved slowly through the garden, watering what needed watering, snipping what needed snipping. The soil didn't ask questions. The leaves didn't push back. They just received it, and I let the silence stretch around me like sunlight, slow and steady, warming from the inside out. The kitchen radio played a faint tune behind the screen door. I couldn't make out the lyrics. I didn't need to. Bees hovered between blossoms, working like they always do. Shadows slid across the grass like a soft sigh. Healing didn't shout. Not for me. It whispered. Through roots, through breath, through every quiet moment I spent, not proving anything, just being. It wasn't the kind of strength you see in movies. No lifting boxes or running errands, no big declarations. But when I picked that first tomato from the vine, warm from the sun, full and red, I felt something settle in me, my palm curled around it, just right. Heavy, but not too. I didn't need anyone to watch. I didn't need anyone to clap. That small, perfect fruit reminded me I was still growing things, still nurturing something from start to bloom. The garden leaves brushed against my arms like a thank you. The breeze carried the scent of sun-warmed fruit and clean laundry from the line. I smiled quietly to myself and stood taller. I didn't need to be seen to feel strong. I just needed to feel it. He held it out like it was nothing. A foil-covered dish, still warm, peach cobbler, I could tell before he said a word. The butter, the cinnamon, the sweet. Each note floated up through the lid like it knew exactly where to land in me. I took it with both hands, careful not to burn my fingers. Still warm, he said with a smile. His voice was gentle, like someone who didn't use more words than he needed. The porch creaked beneath us. Lucy wagged softly by the screen door, tail tapping the wood like a slow drumbeat. The scent of peaches filled the air, and just like that, I was back at a Sunday table long gone, passing plates, laughing too loud, cinnamon caught on my apron. Thank you, I said. But what I felt wasn't just hunger. It was something quieter, something I hadn't tasted in a long time, something like kindness. We sat on the porch, side by side. The chairs leaned slightly toward each other, like they knew the conversation would be soft. Tom spoke gently, each word placed like a stone in a stream, steady, careful, deliberate. His wife had been gone for years, he said, but she still showed, up in the way he talked. We always used to overwater the ferns, he laughed, but they forgave us. He still said we, not out of denial, just memory. I didn't ask much. I just listened. The breeze carried the scent of clover from the edge of the yard. Our iced teas sweated gently in the sun, glasses clinking each time we shifted. And in his stories, I found echoes of my own loneliness. Not in the facts, but in the feeling. It was like hearing someone hum a tune I used to know. We didn't rush. Lucy and Daisy wandered ahead, and we followed at their pace. Step by step, no hurry, no plan. Sometimes we didn't speak at all, just listened to the gravel crunch under our feet, and let the day unfold around us. And it didn't feel awkward, not one bit. It felt like breathing. His quietness didn't ask for conversation. It didn't fill the silence out of fear. It just held space. And I didn't feel like I needed to impress him or entertain. I didn't even feel like I needed to explain who I was. That was the first thing I trusted. Not what he said, but what he didn't say. Lucy was always the alert one, ears up, eyes scanning. Daisy, on the other hand, walked with the kind of calm that only comes from age and trust. She didn't hurry, she didn't wander, she just stayed close, steady. As a shadow, they trotted ahead of us, Lucy looking back now and then, Daisy never needing to. They looked like they'd known each other for years. Like this walk wasn't the first time, but just the latest in a long line of shared paths. Tom chuckled once. "They're a pair, aren't they?" I nodded, watching their tails wag in sync. Connection doesn't always need an introduction. Sometimes it just is. And walking behind them, I realized we were finding our rhythm too. His smile was soft, never too wide, the kind of smile that doesn't expect a return, just offers a little peace. It wasn't flirtation, not even close. It was comfortable, quiet, gentle, the smile of someone who had lost enough to know what not to ask for, and I found myself smiling back. Not because I felt like I had to, but because, for the first time in a long while, it felt easy to. The breeze lifted the edge of his flannel sleeves. The trees glowed amber in the sunset, all warm edges and softened shadows, and in the air I could still smell the baked peaches from yesterday's cobbler. Kindness has a way of lingering. I sat beside him, watching the sky turn that soft in-between color, pink melting into blue. Lucy and Daisy lay near our feet, heads resting on their paws, tails still. The crickets had started their chorus, gentle and low, like they were singing just for us. I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Was it trust? Or just something waking up inside me that had been quiet too long? His presence didn't ask anything of me. But it stirred something. A memory of safety, maybe. Of being seen without effort. And I thought, maybe healing doesn't mean forgetting who hurt you. Maybe it just means you feel safe enough to try again. I looked over at him. He didn't say a word, but I didn't need him to. The hum of her engine reached me before the car came into view. Low, slow, like she was, trying not to be heard. It was too early, and too quiet. I stood on the porch, hands still damp from watering the mums, their petals catching bits of breeze like they, too, were bracing for something. The gravel in the driveway crunched softly, familiar, but not welcome. It used to mean she was coming home. Now it meant something was about to shift. A gust of wind tossed dry leaves across the porch, and the air turned sharp with that iron-tinged scent that comes just after rain. I didn't move, just kept my hand on the railing and watched the car pull in. I wasn't ready, but she was here. She stepped out of the car holding something bright and red, a new leash. The tags jingled with every step she took, loud against the silence, still in its packaging, still not mine. She didn't speak. Just walked toward Lucy with a sort of practiced detachment, as if this were all part of the plan. The porch floor was cool beneath my feet. A twig snapped beneath her boot. She didn't flinch. Neither did I. The leash smelled like plastic and store shelves and clean choices made too far from here. She reached out to clip it on Lucy's collar, but Lucy didn't move, and neither did I. I waited for the anger, for the jolt of heat, the flush of humiliation, the quick burst of something sharp and loud, but it didn't come. What I felt was quieter. Still. It was a kind of clarity that settled behind my ribs like truth does when it's finally done waiting. Not everything broken is meant to be repaired. Some cracks are meant to stay, to remind us how strong we became walking around them. I looked at Anna, at her polished shoes, her stiff posture, her careful distance, and I knew then, I didn't want things back. I wanted peace, and I had it. Lucy leaned into me, her body slow and sure like she'd made her decision long before this moment. She didn't look at Anna. She didn't hesitate, her side pressed against my leg, warm and steady, and I felt it all. The way through me. Her answer. No leash. No tug. Just presence. I placed my hand gently on her back and let it rest there. She let out a small breath, almost a sigh, and stayed close. Dry oak leaves scraped lazily across the porch steps. A soft sound, like an exhale. Whatever Anna had come to collect, it wasn't Lucy, because Lucy had already chosen. Anna stood still, the leash now hanging limp in her hand. She didn't lift her eyes. Not once. She kept them focused on the space between us, like if she didn't look up, she wouldn't have to see the truth. I didn't budge, not out of pride, not out of anger, but because I didn't need to. I saw myself clearly now. I wasn't waiting for her approval anymore, or her understanding, or her version of love that came with conditions. I had my porch, I had Lucy, and for the first time in a long while I had myself. She left the leash on the bench beside us, no words, no goodbye. Just the soft clink of her keys and the careful turn of her back. I didn't stop her, didn't call out. Lucy stayed curled at my feet, head resting lightly on her paws. The leaves around us danced in slow circles, like applause for a quiet decision neither of us needed to name. Anna's car reversed down the drive, tires brushing through fallen leaves. The porch emptied with her absence, but it didn't feel hollow. It felt right. The sky above dulled to silver. The air cooled just enough to pull the blanket tighter around my shoulders. I looked down at Lucy. We stayed, and that said everything. The gate squeaked as I opened it, slow and cautious, like it was asking permission to speak. That sound, it always made my chest tighten, but tonight it meant something more. Like the hinge itself knew the weight of what was about to unfold. Dusk had settled behind the tall oaks, the last light threading through the branches like fading ribbon. A breeze passed by, not cold, but enough to stir the memory-heavy scent of cedar. Anna stood on one side, rigid, chin lifted, arms crossed like armor. Tom on the other, quiet and still, hands loose at his sides. And in the space between them, Lucy. Her tail didn't wag. Her ears stood high. She looked at me, but not for answers, just acknowledgement. And I gave it to her. I held the gate open, arms loose, breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a moment to guide. It was a moment to witness. So I let it breathe. Lucy took one step forward, then stopped. Her paws touched the earth like it might shift beneath her. Careful, deliberate. She glanced back at me once. Just once. Then turned her head toward Tom. Then Anna. Back and forth. I could feel her weighing more than just faces. She wasn't choosing sides. She was choosing safety, comfort, peace. Behind me, the porch light blinked. On. A soft flicker. Another heartbeat. I didn't speak. Didn't move. My heart pounded like a clock gone off rhythm, but I stayed still. I owed her that. The ground was cool beneath her feet. The air had gone so quiet I could hear the stretch of silence like a held breath. She flicked her tail, then waited. Still. She wasn't just picking a person. She was picking who would love her without asking her to explain why. Lucy, Anna called out, sharp, high, clipped, like she was summoning a dog, not calling a friend. I watched Lucy's tail lower, not tucked, just unsure. That sound used to mean dinner time, baths, a game of fetch. It used to mean home. Now it sounded like a command, a claim. Lucy didn't run, didn't wag. She stood frozen between two lives. I felt the urge to step in, to put my hand on Lucy's back, to say, "She doesn't have to go with you." But I didn't. This wasn't my fight. It was hers. The gravel shifted beneath Anna's boots. She didn't move toward Lucy, just stood still, waiting for the dog to obey. Tom remained quiet, hands folded. A soft presence, not pressing. I could see it in Lucy's eyes. She was hearing what love sounded like, and what it didn't. Tom never bent down, never clapped his hands or whistled. He simply stood there, palms open, eyes soft and still. He didn't try to call her name. He didn't need to. That kind of patience is rare, the kind that doesn't try to win. He didn't want to take Lucy. He just stood there offering himself like sunlight on a cool day. Nothing more, nothing less. Behind him, the tall grass waved. In the wind, golden under the last bit of sun. A moth fluttered near his elbow. He didn't sweat it. He was stillness, not silence. And Lucy could feel it. She didn't need words. Neither did he. Lucy moved slowly. No rush. No panic. Just one paw, then another. Her body stayed low and relaxed, her eyes soft and certain. She walked straight to Tom, not with urgency, but with certainty. Her steps barely made a sound on the packed dirt, but I felt everyone like a thud, in my chest. Not grief, not loss, just something ending and something beginning. When she reached him, he didn't bend quickly. He just lowered one hand and placed it gently on her head. That was it. No applause. No praise, just peace. And it was louder than anything else. I didn't wait for Anna to speak. Didn't need to see her face twist or her shoulders stiffen. I just turned toward the house. The porch light had come on, casting a warm glow over the size. Steps. My steps. Her breath caught behind me, sharp, like she'd been stung by her own expectations. Maybe she thought this would go differently. Maybe she thought silence would be on her side, but silence had always been mine. The air cooled fast, brushing past me with the scent of cedar and something final. The porch steps creaked as I climbed them, but the sound didn't follow me. Only my footsteps did, and they sounded steady. Inside, I sat down in my usual chair, hands folded gently in my lap. The house was dim, calm, no rush, no noise. Just a quiet ticking from the wall clock, steady as breath. The window was open just a bit, letting in the scent of damp soil and cool air. The wind chime stirred once, just one soft note. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat. Lucy knew who she trusted, and I didn't need to explain that to anyone. Not anymore. Some choices speak for themselves, and I finally knew how to listen. She came with a crooked tail and a patchy ear that flopped halfway over like it had given up on standing. Tall. The shelter called her Shy Girl, but I didn't give her a name. Not yet. She needed space, and honestly, so did I. The late spring sun poured across the porch floor, golden and soft. The scent of warm bread drifted from the kitchen, curling into the breeze that slipped through the open screen door. She circled the porch 3 times before settling near the steps, always keeping one eye on me. I didn't reach for her, didn't coax. I just let her be. She yawned once, wide and slow, as if she were tired of being careful. Then she inched closer, just enough for her side to brush my slipper. I sat with my tea, letting the jasmine steam warm my hands, and said nothing. We were both learning how to stay, and in that silence, something began. She's not Lucy. Her gait is different, lighter somehow, more cautious. Her barks sharper, her eyes more watchful. But when she tilts her head at the sound of the teapot, or nudges my hip in the garden just to let me know she's there, something inside me remembers. Not grief, not exactly. More like a rhythm returning. The full kind that hums when life is finally moving again, not rushing, not dragging, just pulsing along in its own quiet way. We walk the garden path together, me humming under my breath, her padding behind me, paws silent on the soft soil. The rosemary is growing thick again, the birds weaving their songs through the air like thread through fabric. Every now and then she pauses, as if to check, "Are we okay?" And every time I nod, because we are. She's not Lucy, and she doesn't need to be. There was a time when even breakfast felt like a decision too big to make. I'd stand in front of the pantry, holding a loaf of bread, like it asked a question I couldn't answer. But not this morning. This morning I sliced the bread, buttered it while it was still hot, and let it melt all the way to the crust. A sprinkle of cinnamon, a tiny dash of salt, just the way I liked it, just the way I remembered liking it. The kitchen glowed in the morning light. The knife clicked gently against the ceramic plate. The dog let out a sigh from the rug, content without needing anything from me, and I didn't pause, didn't second guess. I just ate. Sometimes healing doesn't roar in, sometimes it slips in quietly, on buttered toast, warm hands, and a quiet kind of confidence. The garden greeted me like an old friend, no questions, no explanations. Tomatoes had fattened on their vines, the rosemary stood upright again. Even the lavender, which I had nearly given up on, buzzed with bees and new color. I walked the rows slowly, fingers brushing the stalks, whispering things I didn't need anyone else to hear. Names, memories, little pieces of myself I had scattered and found again in the dirt. The wind rustled through the leaves like it was saying, "You stayed, and I had." The pup nosed gently at the mint, sneezing once, then sitting with that expectant look only dogs know how to wear. I smiled, bent down, and rubbed the place between her ears. The air smelled green again, like growing things, like hope without effort. The garden knew me again, and more importantly, I knew it back. The house is still small. The porch still creaks. The mailbox still sticks in the afternoon heat. But it's mine. Anna hasn't called in weeks. At first, I waited. Listened to the phone like I used to listen for her feet on the stairs. But not anymore. Now I just listen to the breeze as it slips, through the window screens, to the click of the mail slot as it drops in a new envelope, addressed to me. Every bill, every label, every letter proves it. My name is on this house, not in protest, not in pride, just truth. It's in the hum of the fridge, the swing of the screen door. The rhythm of the porch swings when I sit down and lean back with tea in my hand and a dog at my feet. This house doesn't just hold me, it holds who I've become. The chimes used to rattle like questions, nervous and hollow, all tin and tremble. Every guest felt like it was asking something I didn't know how to answer. But today, the breeze came soft, and the wind chimes sang. Not frantic, not searching, just a low, sweet melody that filled the porch like a hum fills a memory. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and smiled. Not wide, just enough. The scent of jasmine from my morning tea still lingered nearby, and the sky was that gentle blue that doesn't demand anything from you. It's a small thing, but peace usually is. I used to wonder when trust would return, waiting for someone to hand it back to me like a permission slip, but it never worked like that. This morning, the new pup curled beside me on the porch, her breath slow and steady, her body leaning in like she'd known this spot forever. And I felt it, not from her, but from me. A quiet sort of knowing. Maybe, just maybe, I was trustworthy after all. The porch chair rocked beneath us. The breeze kissed the edge of my toes, and for once, I didn't hope for anyone else to notice. I just knew. Trust starts from inside, and mine had finally come home. If you've ever had to rebuild your peace from quiet moments and second chances, then you understand. I'd love for you to stay a little longer. Maybe subscribe. Maybe share a moment when something small helped you feel whole again.